Hey everybody, how's it going? Happy 4th of July. Hope you're having a good one with friends, family, either grilling or out on a boat, shooting off some fireworks. Um, I'm down here working on horns. That's kind of how I like to celebrate every holiday and every other day. So, got some updates for the early K5HL Path to Restoration trilogy of videos here, or I guess it's more than a trilogy, but we'll see how many parts. I think this is part 5, if I remember correctly. So, got the bells cleaned up, got the manifold cleaned up, hardware's cleaned up, and then you guys saw I had cleaned the diaphragms, and then we got the diffuser rings all cleaned up. So we'll kind of tear into this, show you guys some things. So, like I said, this project's a little bit different from my other ones. Normally, when I clean a horn, I scrub the daylights out of it, inside and out, to the point where I try to make things shine, especially in the power chambers. This project I did not do that with because honestly, I don't really have to be that clean as long as I get rid of all foreign and loose material inside the power chamber, make sure the nozzle rings themselves are clean. That's really all you need. Make sure the inlets are cleaned out, make sure all the air pathways in the manifold are clean. That's really all you need to clean. So this I kind of took a little bit more relaxed, realistic approach, just that way if one of you out there gets a horn like this and it's well used and you don't really have the means to do that much cleaning or the means to replace a bunch of parts, this is just kind of a good show of how you can still do that without putting a bunch of time and effort into making it 100% perfect, because they don't need to be 100% perfect to sound 100% perfect. So first thing here, guys, you can see the paint on some of these bells is really weird. Like really weird, and from the cleaning what I could tell is this is one of those horns that has been painted twice. It had gotten its original paint job when it was applied to the locomotive, and then somewhere down the line they must have done work to the locomotive and done some repainting here and there, and there's areas where you guys can see where there's been another layer of black applied, and not very well at all either. You guys can see the original black that was on there and then the secondary black. Now this paint is faded and not as shiny as it was because I've wiped everything down with lacquer thinner to get them 100% clean and ready for paint, or repaint I should say. But you guys can see a lot of it was done with actual brush too. You can see brush marks. That's clearly not from a spray gun. And there's a couple other bells where you can see where it was actually applied with a paintbrush, like there too. That's pretty typical of a quick fix-it-up paint job. Both of them were done in-house. Well, the first one was definitely done in-house. The second one might have been like a different shop fix. I don't know why they painted the horn again, but you know, whatever. We'll once it's assembled, I'm gonna repaint it nice gloss black. I know some people are really against painting over railroad colors, but in this case it's gloss black. I mean, yes, it's a railroad applied gloss black, but at the end of the day it's just a gloss black, and I want the horn to look nice. So completely fine with doing that. It's not like it's an 80-year-old horn with beautiful Amtrak paint on it. It's a horn from 2005 that's got some gloss black on it, so not too worried about that. Don't plan on selling the horn, so I want it to be looking nice in my collection. So the manifold has been meticulously cleaned of all soot and is ready for paint. Inside and out is cleaned up. You guys can see these inlets are much cleaner from the last time you guys saw them. The bolt holes have been cleaned up. I talked about how I retapped all the bolt holes, made sure everything is nice and clean. I know you guys can't really see in there. But yeah, the manifold is ready to go. No issues with it at all. One thing that I ran into with my other early K5HL sitting out there was I had two pinholes in the manifold. They were here and here, right where those castings kind of meet. And it was not anything that somebody had did. It was two flaws from the actual mold itself, and they never got caught when testing the horn because they were very tiny holes. And I'm sure it didn't really affect the hertz of the horn overall, so they, I doubt they even paid much attention to that when they were testing the horn at the factory. But this one didn't have that issue. I checked it over very carefully, no pinholes anywhere, so manifold is airtight. And that's also something I kind of tested when I originally tested this horn. Was I applied just enough air to where if there would be a pinhole in the manifold, I would have heard the air leaking out. So this manifold's good to go, real good piece. Cleaned up the paint off of the number in the two reasons. One, so I could figure out the number, and number two is so that way when I repaint it, hopefully I can still see the number, but we have video reference of what the number is, so if the paint does completely cover the number to the point where I can't see it anymore, I'm not too worried about it. So we'll go inside the bells now, inside the back caps, and I'll show you how I did a very simple clean, nothing too crazy. We'll start off with the two-piece 1L. We'll start off with the power chamber. This bell, out of all of them, cleaned up the best. And I'm not sure if it's just because it's sand cast metal. It really didn't hold a lot of staining like all the other ones did. So the back cap, you can see there's still soot staining around the vent holes. That is something that would not scrub out. And I did not use any Scotch-Brite pads on this. Now normally if I use Scotch-Brite pads on this, this would look like this would be completely shiny. There's really no reason for me to do that as long as the metal is still clean and clean to the touch, and nothing's inhibiting the relationship between the diaphragm and that machine surface right there. There's no reason to remove all that staining. That's a lot of extra time in scrubbing to get those parts that clean, and which most of those horns out there are that clean, but I'm just getting to the point where I really don't have to do that, and it hurts my fingers after a while scrubbing nonstop on all these bells and everything. So trying to be a little bit more realistic, a little bit more practical with my cleaning. And also it kind of shows you guys how you can do stuff really easy. You don't have to spend hours on end scrubbing. But I'll show you the brushes that I use. So I did not use the wire brush on any of that. Let's see, some of these are kind of dirty. I use these black bristled ones. They're just like a plastic bristle, so nothing too aggressive. That's pretty much what I used on everything. I did not use them on the diaphragms though, like I told you guys in the last video. I just cleaned those completely by hand. Did not want to scratch those all up. Power chamber cleaned really nice. You guys can see a little defect in the casting there, but that doesn't bother anything. Nozzle ring is in really good shape on this. And like I said, it's super clean. A little bit of staining right there that wouldn't come out. Like I said, if I use Scotch-Brite, I could get that out, but I just didn't feel the need to do that. This, as long as this area is clean and the inlets are all clean, that's really all you need. So that cleaned up really nice. The machine surface on the front side of the power chamber, you guys can see it's in really, really nice shape. So that cleaned up really good. The gasket is in really good shape. It's not stiff. You guys can see it's still super bendy. I cleaned it up as much as I could. A little bit of paint remnants here and there around the outer edge, but other than that, it's in really good condition. So we'll be using the original gasket. No reason to replace that. The back side of the bell, you guys can see it is in fantastic shape. Clean that by hand, did not use a tool. Cleaned out the bolt holes. I did not tap those ones because they were those bolts came out with like they were not really all that tight, so they came out with ease. And cleaned out the inlet, cleaned the body of the bell, just that way everything's ready for paint over the old paint. Really no point in spending too much time in stripping all these, because honestly that's what the railroads do. They'll just kind of, if they don't replace the horn and paint over it, they'll just paint over the old paint, which exactly is what somebody did at some point. So, but this horn will look fantastic after it's all said and done. So we'll just kind of all that. Now this like I said, this is the cleanest one. The rest of these do not look that pretty. There's a lot of staining in some of these, which is to be expected with the age of the horn and how much action it's seen. Here's the back cap off of the one bell. So like we talked in the comments before, this has that offset hole, kind of a funny little misprint. Like I showed you guys in my other early K5HL, the one back cap on that one also has an offset hole, but it's on the other side. And I was able to talk to a few other people that have early K5HLs, and I guess it's both a common and not common thing. There's probably quite a few of these that don't have this defect on any of the back caps, and then there seems to be quite a few of them that do have this defect on the back cap. And it's not just limited to the one back cap. Somebody that I talked to in the comments said that theirs was on a different bell. So you know, it's just probably whatever the luck of the draw is when they put these things together. The time frame of these back caps just so happen there's quite a few of these that actually have a misprint on them. But anyway, so you guys can see there's still quite a bit of staining in there. But I did scrub it as clean as I could with the soft brush, not scratching anything up. Basically just getting things as clean as they wanted to be. Like I said, if I took the time with Scotch-Brite, I could completely get rid of all that staining, but literally it's not going to affect the sound of the horn one bit, so there's really no point for me to do it. Just as long as everything is clean to the touch, I can rub my fingers all over it and then nothing's going to come off. So, and I am wearing gloves just that way I don't fingerprint all this stuff up. I want it to be 100% ready for paint after testing and everything. So that's the one back cap. Here's the one bell power chamber. You guys can see, I don't know if this would focus, still quite a bit of staining in there, but inlet's nice and clean. All the bolt holes are clean. The little vent holes are all cleaned out. The nozzle ring itself is free of any staining, and that's the biggest part. A little bit of staining in the bore, but that's literally not going to affect the sound one bit. So it was actually kind of nice to clean things like that, because I did not that probably saved me quite a few hours just in scrubbing. Here's the two. So not quite as much staining on the two. Back cap cleaned up a little bit nicer. Still have some of that soot staining inside the vent holes. And some of these, one thing that I really watch for is making sure all my vent holes are unplugged. And some of these bells had one or two of these holes that were completely plugged, which that's not going to affect the sound one or two. I've even seen horns that had them all plugged and the horn still sounded pretty good. But stuff like that is stuff that I really look out for and make sure, just make sure that it's clean and open so that way the horn can breathe properly as it's sounding. The two bell, you can see there's areas of it that are really super shiny, and then there's areas of it that aren't so shiny. So of course That's the bottom of the bell, sits on the manifold facing like that. And you guys can see down here is where all that moisture collects and sits. And then up top you really don't get quite so much of that. So that's why it's a little bit shinier up top, or on that side, and then a little bit dirtier or more stained on this side. But all that is completely clean to the touch. You can rub your bare finger on it all day, nothing's going to come off. And then of course the nozzle ring is, oh come on, focus, there we go. Oh, I don't know why my phone's being a real pain right now. There we go. Nozzle ring's nice and clean, ready to roll. The number 3, like I said, just to prove that anyone can do just a simple restoration project like this and keep all the original parts, we're going to keep the original 3. Yes, it is wore down, but I don't even know if that would be an issue within my lifetime, with this being in a personal collection now and not seeing regular railroad time. So I'm not too worried about that. So you guys can see this did get cleaned up in the center there a little bit better, so you guys can see those wear marks of where the broken diaphragm was vibrating and rubbing up against the back of that surface. I know it looks like those are cracks. Those are not cracks. They are just simple lines of where the diaphragm was kind of carving a little path there. Nothing's broke. This is still a completely good back cap. No reason to replace it. A lot of staining. This one has the most staining out of all of them. I'm guessing that's just from the fact that the diaphragm was broken, so it kind of changed how the airflow was going through here. And so yeah. But still cleaned up pretty decent from what it was. Still in this shape, completely usable, 100% usable. Nothing wrong with it. So the number 3, you can see it's pretty well stained all the way around. And then you guys can see the little bit thicker collection of staining at the bottom of the bore, because that's just how the bell sits. All that moisture collects right there. Man, phone's not cooperating today with me. So nozzle ring's nice and clean. Nice and wore down, but it's still nice and clean, so that should not be an issue. Inlet's been cleaned. This has some of that wonky double paint on it, and then this crazy, like literally just no attempt at all to paint the bottom of the bell the second round. This is the second coating of paint. Whatever little bit of paint is on the bottom here is left over from the first go, which there's not much, but that's okay. Once we get it painted up, it'll be looking a lot better. And then the number 4 back cap, you can see there's a pretty good stain line right there where the moisture was collecting, and I believe that hole right there had actually sealed up just from all the crud slowly building up over time. And it's at the angle, it's angled back cap, so that's the angle that the back cap would be on. That's why, you know, there's the back cap straight up and down. Turn it one round, and that's why it's like that. So, but everything's nice and clean to the touch. Nothing's gonna come off. Good usable part. And then the inside of the 4-bell. So you can see right at the very, so not as the bell sits right now, but in relation to as it sits on the manifold, you can see the top corner of the, oh geez, there we go. You can see the top corner of the bore is nice and clean, and then everything else is pretty well stained. And then even the top end of the power chamber is a little bit cleaner than down here where all the moisture kind of sits after, or sits over time. So but everything's still cleaned up really good. Like I said, if I wanted to, I could completely annihilate all that staining, but there's no reason to. Just as long as we get the important stuff clean and there's nothing that can break loose and float around in there, that's all that matters. So all that's done. Those are all ready for reassemble. We have all the original hardware here, stripped of paint. The reason I stripped these is because they're already thick and paint was already pretty thick on them, and some of these bolts were kind of hard to get sockets over. And when I paint this horn, I don't want to get the bolts to the point where you can't read the lettering anymore. So if there's already a thick coating of paint and let's say you do like even 2 more coats over that, you're basically going to have a blank face bolt, which in hindsight doesn't really matter, doesn't really affect anything. People might not even notice that, but my OCD kind of gets to me on that stuff sometimes. So these are all strips, that way when they paint up, they'll just be, I might do 2 coats on this horn. So it'll just be 2 coats of paint. You'll still be able to read it clearly, and then later on, if I ever have to open up the horn again, it's not going to be a pain in the butt. And then, now that these are all clean, I can show you guys. There was 2 bolts that had damage to the threads, and one of them was the culprit for starting my retapping. So here's 2 bolts that, and both of these are from the 1L. So I get some good lighting here for you. So this one, you guys can see there's 3 spots where the threads are broke. This came out of the side that did not give me any hassle pulling out, surprisingly. This one, you guys can see there's 2 spots right there where the threads were broke, and then another spot right there. This is the bolt that I really had to work back and forth a few times and really take my time getting out, because I did not want this to break. I did not feel like drilling it out, retapping. I mean, I retapped the hole regardless, but dealing with a broken bolt is never fun, as some of you know. And I really wanted to use all the original hardware on this. So, like I said, I ran the dies down on these. You guys can see the threads are really good and clean. These broken parts are not going to cause an issue. The dies cleaned them up really good, and literally I could, by the end of me working the die back and forth quite a few times, I was able to just freely spin it, and it would spin all the way down, unspin it, and spin all the way back. So everything's really good there. But just to kind of show you guys what I was dealing with and why why that particular one was really giving me hell when I was trying to get it out. Everything else is cleaned up pretty good. All the back cap bolts are ready to go. The 3 bolts that hold the 2-piece together are in really good shape. All of the other diffuser ring bolts are good, and then of course the original lock washers are still in good shape. I know some people like to put a secondary smaller washer underneath these, so that way they don't bite into the metal on the bells. I don't do that. You'd really have to take them off and put them on, and take them off and put them on a lot for you to really start causing an issue to the point where like it wouldn't hold, which I mean like ages. So I don't really worry about if it starts a little area of wear, because they already have them. You know, they already have those little wear marks on them from the washers, and it's just nature of the beast. That's honestly nothing I'm ever going to worry about, is putting secondary washers on there. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to do. It's a really awesome thing to do, because it does save the overall integrity of the foot. But on the other hand, for those to actually dig down deep enough to cause an issue, you'd have to be like, I don't know, take it on and off like a million times through your life to do that. So I don't really worry about that. These are all in pretty good condition. Got the paint cleaned off of them. Of course, they're not, they're a little spaced out. They're not quite as good as brand new ones, but they still work just the same. So all the original hardware is good to go. And like I said, the only things that I did have to replace was, of course, the actual broken parts over here. So And you guys have seen this in the other videos. The rear diaphragm that is just completely trashed. Including the big piece, 4 different pieces that's in. And then all the damage that occurred to the cushion ring. Now this cushion ring would still work, but I already have to replace this, so why not replace this part? And it's not, these are parts that are not impossible to find either, like changing out the 3-bell. Some people don't have that. You know, sometimes the 3-bell is hard to come by, especially if you want to find an error correct one. So stuff like that, I can understand how somebody that's not quite so deep into the hobby can really have access to or might have trouble finding. But diaphragms and cushion rings you can find a lot on eBay, or if you want to overpay for stuff, you can go on Horn Blasters and get a diaphragm, a cushion, two diaphragms and a cushion ring for like $45. It's kind of outrageous pricing, but whatever. At least the parts are still available and they're easy to find. That's pretty much what I'm getting at. Diffuser rings were all in good shape. I have run into in the past where I had a broken 2-piece 1L diffuser ring. Now the things with these, as you guys can see, they are a bigger bolt hole because it's a bigger bolt. And these are also a little bit more lightweight than these, and that's not just because of the like material. This is like a whole, it's like thinner, a little bit thinner than those, I think. But they definitely feel lighter. So these are more apt to break. What I did in that case, and that's before I had any spares, I literally just took a regular one and re-drilled out the holes to fit the bigger bolts. So that's another simple way. If that's broken and you're able to get your hands on a bunch of the normal ones, you can supplement one for the other. But yeah, so other than that, other than those 2 pieces, I will, I guess I am going to put new gaskets in the feet because the old ones are pretty well shot. I could reuse them. I'd have to clean them up, take my knife, trim them, and I do that with some of my older ones that are good enough to save. I'll actually take the time to kind of recut them, clean them up, and use them. But these are readily available at most hardware stores. If you go in their O-ring section and look around, and I'll see, I think I might actually have the size for you guys here. Let me see when so these are a bunch of my old ones. I'll do that in another video because that's buried and I got this thing in the way, so. But I'll get you guys the dimensions on that. You can even take one of the old ones and bring it to your hardware store and just tell them, hey, I need a bunch of these. So I will be replacing those, and that is another really easy piece to find for anybody. So I'm just really trying to do this from a really realistic, simplified standpoint for everyone. So that way some of the beginners in the hobby, or maybe you're not too sure of opening up a horn, even though you know there's an issue. I just want to show you guys that it's really not that scary to open up these things. Yeah, you might run into some issues. Yeah, you might break a bolt. That's always, even on raised letter. I've had raised letter horns, newer raised letter horns break bolts. So I mean, it's not just the older the horn, the more bolts you're going to break. It's just whatever kind of situations it was put through, elements-wise. If it was a cold climate horn, if it was a hot climate horn, if it saw a bunch of both, if it's on the East Coast, it saw more rain than a horn on the West Coast. So I mean, it's really just whatever you get is whatever you get, and then you just kind of work with it when you run into issues like that. So yeah, guys, it's all done, ready to go back together. I'm going to start assembling it. I'm hoping I can test it this evening. We'll see how that goes, see how long it takes me to get together. I'm not too worried about making extra noise tonight since it is the 4th of July. I'm sure people are going to be shooting off fireworks till all hours of the night. That's how it was last night. So yeah, we'll start putting the old girl back together. I am going to take my time. I'm going to make sure I line up all the diaphragms and try and get them right back in exactly how they came out, facing the exact same way. I want all those wear marks to kind of go back how they were. So that way the horn is basically like a relaxed fit in a sense. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this update, guys. So this is the last big update for this horn. And it's pretty exciting that we're finally to this point. This is a little bit longer than some of my other projects. Normally I can get a horn together pretty quick, but normally I do a little bit more cleaning, so it's probably about the same time. But like I said, I wanted to really have this one ready for you guys, so that way I could do a little bit more in depth on just a good servicing, good cleaning, but nothing beyond and above what you would absolutely have to do to get the horn to sound clean and clear. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much it. On a side note, I did get myself a little tool set. Now I am a tool guy, and I know this is nothing fancy. I do have a lot of Milwaukee Craftsman and stuff like that in the garage, and I got really tired of having to go back and forth and bring tools and such. And I do have my one special socket set that I keep down here, but I wanted a better socket set just for down here, so I picked this up for like $150. It's like a 215 piece mechanics tool set, and like I said, it's nothing fancy, but I don't intend on doing anything fancy with it. It comes with a bunch of deep well sockets, a couple different size ratchets, screwdriver with interchangeable heads or bits, more sockets in there. These things open up. Slide these things out here. Some more different actual socket bits, more smaller sockets, some of those fancy bits, some U-joint universal hookups there, and then they even give you like a little storage space, and then a smaller socket, and metric and standard well, that's dark, metric and standard Allen wrenches. So I just wanted to get myself like something cheap, you know. Like I said, I know this isn't like a really, I don't even know if this is like a really well-known brand, but it was like $150, plus I even got a lifetime warranty on it, so it's pretty sweet. Just needed something for down here, so that way I just would have more tools and I wouldn't have to keep running back and forth all the time. So there's just a little side note.